All right, everybody, it's time to go ahead and dive into this month's webinar here. Looks like we got everybody we need. So welcome to the monthly webinar. This time we're going to be going over service agreements, and that's going to cover a couple different things here. As always, though, this is Nori, one of the trainers here at My Service Depot, and I'm joined by my co-star here, Jess.
Hello.
And like I said, today we're going to be talking about service agreements and what you guys can do to improve process and smart service. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. So our first big question here is, what is a service agreement? We're going to talk about, what defines a service agreement and why do companies offer these in the first place? Now, we do have a lot of customers that do offer service agreements already, but for some of you, maybe, startups, people that just maybe haven't, considered this before, where do these come in as a benefit to a business? Once we get all that taken out of the way here, we can talk about managing service agreements. Our first topic is going to cover how to do this in the default Smart Service package. So this is something everybody can walk away with today. And then after that, for those of you who have maybe more of a specialized process, you want some extra features, some extra benefits here, we do have a specialized service agreement module, which we'll be going through as well to show you, what that module does. Is that a worth it investment for you? We'll go ahead and give you all the information. But let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so our first question here is, what is a service agreement? And as you can see here, we got a little definition on the screen. Basically, a service agreement is going to be any time that you as a company are agreeing to perform maintenance on some frequent schedule for a customer. Now, there are a lot of benefits for those service agreements for both you and the customer, of course. But the idea that we're going to continue with here, there's a billing cycle, there's a set number of maintenances for a set item or a set number of services. So why offer these service agreements? Well, here's a couple things that we can look at for why we offer them. So I made a little chart here with a business side and a customer side. Let's go ahead and go down the business one. So the first one is strengthen your customer relationships. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, if you're doing the service agreement, let's say quarterly, that means you're going to be in contact with that customer quarterly, which they're going to recognize your face. They're going to recognize that company. They're going to say, hey, when I have a problem, these are the guys I need to go to. So that keeps that customer around, not only for their regular service agreement services, but also for any other services they need. So it's a good way to stay in front of the customer, make sure we maintain that contact so people don't slip off our radar. Another good reason that we have these here is to provide a steady cash flow. You're going to have these service agreements and they're usually going to be annual contracts or something like that. Well, good, because then we can see, what are we making for these? Maybe in the slower months, we don't have as much stuff to do. Well, we know we can count on these service agreement contracts, these monthly or quarterly bills or whatever we establish to make sure that we keep getting paid for the services. The next one after that we have would be keeping those techs busy during those slow seasons. So for the same reason that we would, want to go ahead and keep the cash flow, well, we also have a reason to keep these guys out there working. We can get them out there, we can get them looking at other things. Maybe they can offer some quotes while they're there, try to do some upsells and stuff like that. So those are the reasons why a lot of companies go for these service agreements. They do help you all around in the company in little passive ways, which is what we all want. Keeps everything nice and stable for us. Now, as for the customers, well, what do the customers get from this? Well, they get a couple different things. So the first thing is they get the fixes to their problems before they even start. If I go out there and I notice there's something wrong with your furnace, and I do it on the service agreement, well, good. I noticed it before something blew out. Before a belt tore, before a blower motor overheated or went out. I'm going to be able to see that information, see what's going on for you before there's a problem. Hopefully, save you a little bit of money on there and save us when we go back out there to do some work for you. Won't be as intensive. Another good one, and this isn't true for all equipment, but it is for a majority of equipment. A lot of manufacturers would like to see service agreements. They do help keep those warranties valid. Now, like I said, that's something you want to check with your vendor or your manufacturers on. However, for a lot of these things, furnaces and stuff like that, it is going to help keep that warranty up and running, keep that unit in service, which is good for everybody. The last one here is that make structured payments for service. So let's say, you get out there and, okay, you had this huge problem and it costs $700 to fix. Well, who wants to be in that spot, right? Nobody's going to be able to shell out $700 like that. So with this here, with those service agreements, I'm paying incrementally, maybe every month and you guys come out, semi-annually or something like that. I don't have to pay all that at once to get everything fixed. I can make these little payments just like a cell phone bill to make this a little bit easier on me. So those are kind of the benefits of, what the company gets, what the customer gets. I would like to direct everybody's attention to the link at the bottom of the screen. It's a very good resource that I got some of this information from. It's called How Everyone Wins with Service Agreements, and it's definitely got I think about 12, 15 points for each, and a lot of them are pretty good insight on, what you guys can really get to make sure you're getting everything possible out of your service agreements. But all right, so we've got all the information here for what we're looking at today and why we're going to do it. Let's go ahead and jump into the process here. I'm going to go ahead and switch screens, and we're going to pass this off to Jess so he can go ahead and get started with what we do service agreements for and why. And before I do that here, I would like to go ahead and mention, remember everybody, on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a little question section where you guys can ask questions. So if anything comes up, we are here taking questions live. Feel free to type a little question in that window. We'll go ahead and give you an answer, or we'll answer these over the air, which is what we try to do. But without further ado, let me go ahead and pass this over to Jess, and let's get started on seeing what Smart Service can give you today.
All right, guys. I hope everybody's doing well today. I'm going to be taking you through the process to use Smart Service in its base form, so without the actual service agreement module. And I'm going to walk you through how we want to get everything set up in Smart Service so we have everything set up correctly, and we can keep track of all of the information that we're going to need to make sure that we are on time with our service agreements and our customers are happy with us. So to kind of get started here, I want to go through the setup of this. The first thing that you guys would want to do is go into your setup inside of Smart Service. And then we're going to set up a couple of user-defined fields here. So some of you may be familiar with these, some of you may not be, but they are, in a nutshell, custom fields inside of Smart Service.
And just to throw a note in there, folks, for any of you who are following along, not everybody has access to that setup tab. You may need to contact your system administrator to get into this. But once again, this whole video is going to be recorded for you. It's going to be available at smartservice.com/webinar. So feel free to just watch this if you don't have access to that setup tab just now.
Yeah, but once we get into the user fields here, we're going to want to direct our attention to the customer user fields. So if I select that, we can see here that we've got a few fields set up already. The ones that we're going to be focusing on today are field 4 and 5. So for field 4, we want to gather the information about whether or not this customer is part of our planned services. So for example, today I'm using the ESA, which is kind of an HVAC model, but it stands for Energy Savings Agreement. So this will kind of expand into other service industries as well. You'll just need to come up with your own terminology. But for this field, what we would put in there is yes or no, whether or not they are a service member. And then field number 5 is going to be important so that we can pick up when a customer's ESA is going to end for them. So we can maybe go out there and say, hey, you guys are coming up on your last service. Are you guys going to be renewing? But this is going to give us a little bit more information when we go to do a report. And while you're in the user field section here, I want you to jump into your job exceptions as well, because we want to set up a job exception for if we go out into the field and we're talking to one of our customers who don't currently have one of our planned maintenance programs set up with their account. Inside of our job exceptions, if we have a field tech out there and they say, yeah, let's get signed up for that, the customer does. The technician can then flag the office with something like, contract sold, customer would like to sign up for our agreements so that they can get on planned maintenance.
And another note with that too, guys, remember that you can create your own fillable PDF forms for iFleet, which means that agreement that you got probably on your desk right now, or one that you're thinking of in your head of what we want this to look like, you can get that into a form for iFleet so that the guys can actually have the customer, or they themselves can fill that out in the field. And then they can send that right back to you as part of their normal job in Smart Service. Now, once again, you guys can always go to our YouTube channel here, and we can see, how to create those fillable PDF forms. If you just type in integrate PDF forms, you'll see the video there. Or you can always contact us here and commission us to create one for you.
Yeah. So with that being said, that's pretty much all we need to do in the setup portion for right now. We will be coming back in here a little bit later because we're going to want to set up some job reminder options so we can send out emails to our customers when their services are coming up. But for right now, I'm going to navigate back out to my home screen. And the next step that we want to go through here is, getting the customer set up as well. So we've set up all of the fields that we're going to need that are necessary for this process. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go in and find the customer that, let's say one of our field techs got them onto our service plan here. So we're going to go ahead and pull up our customer list. And Ashley Elmo is the person that is going to be getting set up here today. So I'm going to go ahead and open up her profile. And once we get in here, there are a few things that we want to get tied to their account. So right now, she's just set up as a residential customer. So we want to come in here, and you'll notice that I have a couple of different options for my ESAs here. So this is another portion that you'd want to set up. This is something you can do inside of QuickBooks. These are your customer types.
And just let's go ahead and head back to that setup tab here.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and show them that in the job type.
Gotcha. So we would go back into our defaults here. And then we also have some things set up inside of this job type field so that we can flag these jobs that we're setting up that we're going to be going out on a reoccurring basis, maybe monthly, semi-annual, annual. But this is going to give us something that we can report on. Again, reporting is one of the keys here. This is going to give us the ability to look for that specifically in a report for jobs, so we don't look at a bunch of our other job types that are listed in here.
Yeah, and that's going to be just the same principle as those of you who are already tagging, installs and repairs and all that stuff. You're going to use one of these job types. For those of you maybe who haven't heard of job types before, that's just a different way to categorize your service so that you can find things quickly, like what Jess is saying here with the ESA maintenances. It takes 2 seconds to pull up a report, which we'll be showing you here in a little bit, but just to see all that information. And Jess is also going to do that same thing for the customer types. Now, I would like to say at this point, though, if you are using QuickBooks Online, the customer and job types are not yet available in QuickBooks Online. There's no field for us to map those to. However, Smart Service does give you guys the ability to do that. The reason I bring it up is because your window of these will look a little bit different when you go to do them. You'll have an Add New button as we do at the top of this one. Jess, if you could highlight over that. But instead of, and go ahead and click on that, Jess, instead of showing up with this window for QuickBooks Desktop, it'll open up in kind of a longer list that'll take up, like the majority of the middle of the screen. And you can just type one in there. Smart Service will still let you store and report on that information. So you're good to go, but slightly different window.
Yeah. But now that we've kind of covered that end of things, the next thing we want to do is we want to get into our customer again here. So we're going to go ahead and switch the type of this customer over to our ESA residential option. So once we have that defined in here, the next thing that we want to do is we want to head down to our My Customer Field section so that we can go ahead and get the information added in here stating that they are indeed a ESA customer, and then their expiration date for this agreement is going to be a year from today's date. So we can go ahead and type it in like this, and I recommend this method because it makes reporting a little bit easier. You can actually sort these fields and things like that if you stick to one of these formats, because inside of these fields, you can kind of enter whatever you would like, but when we stick to that format, it lets us do all that sorting that we need.
Yeah, folks, think of it this way. We're going to have the computer sort A to Z alphabetical order. So you want to put in the biggest piece of the pie first, down to the smallest. Now, another important thing that I want to make sure everybody notices here, you notice how even though it's, the month of June, Jess is putting 06. Well, why is he doing that? Well, the reason of why we're doing that is, let's say you have something that is on the 1st of the month and something that's on the 10th, right? So for the day you put in 1, and for the other day you put in 10. Well, what's the computer do with that when it tries to sort it? It doesn't think about the date range. What it's going to do is it's going to put the 1 next to the 10, so your dates aren't going to be sorted right. So you want to put 01, 02, so on and so forth. So make sure it's always a double digit, so that way Smart Service can actually see what you're going to be talking about. And let's see here. I want to take a quick question from Sarah here. And she said, I do not have the My Customer Fields or the Service Agreement tab. All right, Sarah, well, let me show you something here. The first thing I want to do is let's return back to the Setup tab and go under User Fields. And Sarah, what you can do here is if you click on Customer Fields, and I'll give you a second to get there, you notice that it has a tab name. You can actually change that. Jess, let's go ahead and change that to ESA.
All right.
So see, I just changed the name of that tab. If he hits the home screen, and we'll have to close out and go back into that customer real quick just so it refreshes that. Let's go ahead and open up Ashley Elmo there. All right. And see, now it says ESA. So your tab might say something different from ours. There's a definite possibility that somebody might have changed it. You do have one of them called My Customer Fields, though, but notice what I'm saying. It's My Customer Fields. Make sure you're on the customer and not a job record. That'll be a big difference. Your job one will have a My Job Fields tab instead.
We've basically set up everything we need in the ESA fields, or My Customer Fields as they were named a moment ago there. Now, the next thing we want to do is we always want to make sure that this customer's got a valid email address on file, because when it comes down to the process of actually setting up our job reminders for our customers so that we can send out a notification when we're coming up on that service, if we don't have an email address, then we're going to have to reach out to them over a phone line and maybe get that and then send out the reminder, or just let them know over the phone. But this gives you a nice little section of Smart Service where you can kind of go in and just hit a button and it'll send out all those reminders for you. But the next thing that we want to do in terms of setting this first visit up so that we can get our ESA rolling with this customer is we want to go in and we want to schedule a job. Now, if you guys are familiar with some of our other webinars that we've done, we do go through the process of setting up a what is called an unassigned employee. So we have one of those set up here, and if we navigate to our schedule, we can see all the jobs that we have scheduled for our regular technicians, but we have this extra column that is essentially blank right now. So with this, that's where we're actually going to schedule this job up at. So we can just highlight a zone on the calendar here. So it's going to be our first visit, and we're going to right click on the schedule in that highlighted zone and then select the new job option. So since we set up Ashley in there, we're going to go ahead and use her as an example. So let's go ahead and pull that up here, and we'll go ahead and select that and hit OK. Now, when it comes to naming these, you can leave them as you have it set up to automatically generate that name, or you can make it a different name so it's easier for you to pick out of that list for all the jobs that you have for that customer. So for this one, I'm just going to name this with her name and then ESA maintenance. So just abbreviated maintenance there. From here, I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then from there, once this gets opened up for us, we're going to go ahead and set up our job type information. So again, that's something we're going to use in reporting a little bit later on in the webinar here. But since Ashley is a residential customer and we're going to be doing that maintenance for her, we're going to select that. And when we talk to the customer about this and get them set up with one of these maintenance plans, we're going to need to find out how frequently that we're going to need to go out there. So for example, with this one, we're going to be going out, let's say semi-annually. So we're going to use our job description here. So that's the field right next to our job type. And in here, we can just type in semi-annual ESA.
And you guys could also do, if you're going to be servicing different pieces of equipment, you might write in the name of that equipment there as well, because then it'd be ESA maintenance for, and then, you know, this date range, or ESA maintenance for, you know, their AC. So you have, you know, really two different options there for what you guys, or you could do a combination of both, like Jess is displaying here. But that way you can get a lot of information out of that report when we go to run it later.
Yeah, and as you add these in here, if you stick with one format, so if, for example, I have my semi-annual ESA, parentheses AC, I could set up another one that's semi-annual ESA for, let's say, heating. That way you can just pick them out of the list. But from here, the next thing that we would want to do is just kind of get the heart of this kind of set up. So that's going to be our job items. This is where we're going to apply, you know, what's included in this service. So on our job items tab, we can come in here and we can either use the drop down, start typing, or my favorite, using the binoculars here, because that opens up a little bit better view of everything that we need. We can kind of search through our list a little bit easier here. So let's scroll, scroll, scroll. but we would go ahead and select whatever is going to be covered inside of this. And I believe that it might be a little bit easier to type in what we're looking for here. So give me 1 second, type that in there. And it is currently pulling up that information for me. So 1 moment, there we go. So if you're good at remembering what your options are in here, we can go ahead and select one of those out of this list. So Ashley's going to be signing up for our Platinum program. So we can select that one. And the total for this is going to be $12.50 there. So we'll click OK on that. And this can be set up in kind of like an incremental sort of way. So if we didn't want to charge up front for that full $1,250 right up front, we could kind of break this up so that each time we go out there, we have, half of this, or if it's every month, we can put, 1/12 of the total cost in there. And for our customer's sake, we could come into the description for that and kind of fill out what those payments would be outlined as. So, if we were going to split this into 2 payments, since it's a semi-annual service, we can do, 2 payments of $675. So you can put something like that in there so the customer knows what they're expecting when we come out. But after we set that up, the next thing we want to do is go in and kind of set up our scheduling information for this. So this is currently only set up as a non-recurring job. The reason why we wanted to select that unassigned comes in the next step here. So we have our first date set up for the time for our unassigned employee. This is going to be a semi-annually recurring thing. So we're going to go ahead and select semi-annual out of this list. Now, it's given us the next year or so's worth of visits that we're going to be doing for this customer. And those are assigned to our unassigned PM employee. So that, if the technician that does it this year is not available next year during this time or later this year, we can actually change that around. So since we're going to be doing this today, I'm going to go ahead and select myself. So we can see here that my assigned to employee, the person that's going out for this first visit, is set up as somebody other than what we have in our additional dates. Now, the unassigned employee, I did mention there a little bit ago that we do have another webinar that kind of goes into that a little bit more in depth. So that may be something you guys want to kind of take a look at.
And that is the preventative maintenance webinar that we did. Was that last webinar? 2 webinars ago?
I believe that was 2 webinars ago.
Yeah. And guys, that is always available at smartservice.com/webinar, as are all of these videos. Definitely today we're going to go over, kind of the generalized process as Jess is doing here of the preventative maintenance side, really focusing on the service agreement, more administrative side rather than how this gets set up for the field. But if you're unfamiliar with some of the stuff we're doing here, definitely check out that video. It's a full hour detail of, each and every single option that's available on the way to this.
Yeah. But now that we have this all set up, we can go ahead and save and close this. So at that point, we go out and do the actual service, and then we can go ahead and do the billing over to QuickBooks. So that process is basically going to be the same thing that you guys are already used to. So you can use your post work order screen, or you can post them individually from inside of each job. But once we kind of have some of those built up, we're going to want to be able to do our reporting. We're going to be able to do some of those job reminders as well. So let's go ahead and start off with the job reminders. So I want to show you how you're going to set those up real quick here. So we're going to pop back into our setup tab. And then in order to access this information, we need to go to Setup Smart Service Add-ons. So when we get in here, we do need to have this top section filled out, and this is available on our online manual at smartservice.com/wiki. But there are guides in there on how to set this up, or you can reach out to the help desk for that. But if you can kind of take a look down here, we're already looking at our email job reminder setup section. So each one of these is based on one of our job types from Smart Service and QuickBooks. And we have a specific one set up for our ESA maintenance customers. So if you don't see it in here already, you can just select it directly out of this dropdown and choose that particular job type to create a new template. But once we've got it selected, like I do here, we would want to hit our edit button, and then we can fill out a little email to send out to that customer through our job reminders. So just to kind of give you guys an idea of some of the things you can do in here, you can right click and use all these different options to insert information without having to, manually fill in a customer's name, for example.
It's basically working like a mail merge. For those of you who are familiar with the mail merge functionalities in Smart Service, for those of you who aren't, a short description of this, see where it says first name up there, hello, first name. Well, it doesn't show up that way to the customer. What the program does is when you send this out to somebody, it's going to look at their first name on their record. It's going to pull that first name into the email, and that's what they're going to get. It's actually going to address them by name for you. Now, with that being said, you have to make sure that you fill out the fields along the way. Now, scheduled date, scheduled start time, yeah, we already got those because Smart Service is going to make you do that. But things like that job type, now you see why those are so important for us. So we can say, hey, this is your ESA maintenance, or their first name. Make sure to fill out that box so you can address them by first name. That way you have opportunities to do this kind of stuff later on.
Yeah. But once we have our template set up, we can go ahead and hit save on that, close out of the window that we have open here, and navigate back to our home screen. So in order to actually get into send out those job reminders, we're going to have to navigate into our office section of Smart Service. So here between mobile and marketing. But once we get in here, the very first option in this list is going to be our email job reminders. So go ahead and open that up. And then we can come in here and take a look and see, okay, well, we've got a lot of different options in here to do filtering. And we can also kind of set up a date range that we're looking for. So maybe we want to look at the next month or so. So we can look from here all the way down here to the end of the month. So this is going to filter in dates based on whether or not you actually have a service scheduled there. So if you're missing a day, that means there's nothing scheduled there. But in order to kind of filter this list down, you can see here we've got quite a few different options listed out in this the listing for all of our reminders. So one of the things that we would want to do here is select the job type from the job type dropdown. So when we scroll down here, we should be able to find our ESA maintenance, select that, and then hit our refresh. So we can see here that I've got the ESA for Ashley set up here. So our first date would have been today. So let's pretend like this is going out, ahead of time. But we would go ahead and select the email button here. And if we had a larger list of maintenances that were coming up, we would be able to actually use this email all option down here in the very bottom right-hand corner. So you just have to check that. It's going to say, hey, you've enabled this. Please make sure everything is good to go before you actually send this out. But we can click OK on that. And you can only select one day at a time here, so it's going to refresh everything for us. And then we would just go ahead and click on our email all button down here. And once you hit that email button, the email checkbox here is going to be checked off so that it shows that you actually sent that email out to the customer.
And then it looks like Judy has a question here. She wants to know, if I have more than one email address for a customer, will this work?
You should be able to do that. You just need to make sure that they are in the field properly. So if you have two email addresses, you need to use a semicolon, for example, to separate them.
All right, guys. And hey, remember, we got that questions window on the side. So if you're thinking of a question, definitely feel free to let us know.
Yeah. Now that we've kind of covered the basics of using our job reminders, let's say we want to pull up an upcoming ESA report. So the things that we have upcoming over the next month or the next 2 months. We can come back to our home screen here, go into reporting, and I'm actually going to run through this with you from start to finish here. So we're going to go ahead and select our new report option. And remember, we do have a webinar on reporting tax here. So you guys can kind of review that as well. I think that was, what, 3 webinars ago there, Nori?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
All right.
So the first thing we want to do is we want to give this a unique name. So we're going to name it Upcoming ESA Reports. And then we want to make sure that we switch this over to type job. But from here, we don't really necessarily need to set up a grouping. Depending on what you guys are looking for, this is going to be something that you need to tailor kind of towards your own business. But for today, we're going to set up a sort here. So we're going to sort this by the scheduled date. So that's going to put things in chronological order for us. And then down here in our report fields, we're going to set up quite a few things here. So the first thing is going to be our customer name. We want to know what that job name is so that we can kind of see it when we go to look at it on the schedule or in the job listing under a customer. We also want to grab our scheduled date because that's what we're actually sorting by. We want that job type. So we'll be able to tell whether or not they're a residential or a commercial customer. Oh, it looks like that tab.
So close.
Yeah, hit tab before I put in that T there. But after that one, we want to put in the customer user field that we set up to hold the expiration date for this agreement that we have. So we selected customer user field or definable field, number 5, I believe, for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then for this, so that it doesn't look so out of sorts for you, you can use this next row down here, which is labeled alias, to kind of define what you want that column to show up as. So you can just do something like expiration date or, ESA expiration date.
And remember, folks, so the reason why we're doing that is because in Smart Service, just go ahead and click on that drop down for the user definable fields. See, it's just laying it out like this because you can change those user definable fields at any time, and we need something static to pull from, so it doesn't display the name that you guys type in for whatever you want to call that field in the given moment. So it's always a good thing to go back and set up. They're all labeled in there, customer definable field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 12. So just remember which ones you need. We're going to need 5 and 6 for this one, as Jess is selected, and then we can, like you said, just give it an alias. While I'm talking away here, for Roger, if you are confused about where to find the old videos, once again, that is smartservice.com/webinar. You guys will see that at the end of the tutorial here. We'll talk about where to get those other webinars. But if you missed the last one in reporting, definitely go to that website. You can check it out.
Yeah. But the last field that we're actually going to add to this report for today is going to be whether or what kind of reoccurrence we have set up here. So if we select the reoccurring option out of that drop down, that's going to give us the ability to kind of see the information that we need for how frequently we're supposed to go out to this customer's location. So now that we have this all set up, I'm going to go ahead and save and close. And since that is a job report there, we're going to select the job option in our category section. And then all the way down here at the bottom, we'll have that report that we just created. So we're going to apply our filter here. So we want to do a filter on our job types. And we want that one to be the ESA maintenance option. And if you wanted to, you'd be able to come in here and do a filter for, let's say, scheduled date equals this month. So in our drop down here, we can select a date range. So if we select that and save and close, we can then preview that report. So in here, we can see that we have Ashley coming up. She has the scheduled date for today, and then we can see when her expiration date is as well as her reoccurrence. And with this report, if you need to send this over to somebody else in the office, say you're just running the report so that you can get the information together, you would be able to come up here and use your print preview options. So you can either print this report out, you could export it to a PDF document or an Excel document where you can apply different sortings and things like that from Excel. And then you can also do the email option here, which would attach it as whatever kind of file format you would like. So you can do PDF, text doc, anything like that. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to Nori, and he is going to jump in with you guys.
All right, everybody. So I'd like to take a quick intermission here to talk about a couple extra topics as part of this. And that's mostly going to relate to the billing side of how to do all this. So there are a couple ways that you guys can bill for these things. You could do option 1, which is just did earlier, where we're going to do kind of an installment plan, where I might bill a quarter of this service, and that's something that you do with those line items. So we just go back in there, we would change the line items to, what we have. So let me go ahead and open up that job real quick, give you a good visual on that. There it is. So I could come in here to the job items and I could go ahead and write in, hey, you're going to have this much due, but the amount that's due per visit, and then each scheduled recurrence of this job, it's going to add a new charge for that amount. So that's one way to do it if you're going to be charging them, like I said, kind of incrementally as you go. For those of you who are using QuickBooks Desktop, there's another option in QuickBooks alone called a memorized transaction. Now, that's not something I'm going to go into a whole lot of detail about setting up today. QuickBooks definitely has a lot of good information online about it, but it's essentially a way to make a recurring invoice. So some people don't even use the Smart Service invoice for this. They use Smart Service to schedule the work and all that stuff, but you might set up a memorized transaction to say, hey, every quarter, let's go ahead and generate a new bill for this amount. So you kind of have, pick whatever you guys want to do with as far as how you want to bill them. So you can get that part taken care of. But all right, so we got enough time here to go ahead and talk about our Smart Service Agreement Specialized module. Once again, this is definitely something that is available for purchase. You guys can always give us a call to the help desk, or get a hold of your sales rep, or whatever you need to do. Email one of us here in the training department. Let us know, if you're interested in this kind of thing. But let's go ahead and talk about what that's going to do for you today. Because the process we just gave you is, a pretty good process. It does work. It works great in Smart Service. But if you need a little bit extra tracking, you get a couple extra screens with this and a couple extra little neat reports you guys can run. So I'm going to start off at the home screen here. And what I would want to do if I want to set one of these up is I would go first off to Setup tab once I've purchased the module, and I would take a look at this Service Agreement tab in here. You'd want to hit this little check mark to enable the Service Agreement module. At that point, you guys can go ahead and name your service agreement. A lot of people like to call theirs something else, so let's just call this, maybe this is ESA, or we'll do ESA maintenance. So we'll get that in there. You have options to include the jobs and include equipment. I'm going to go into that again here in a little bit when we actually go to set that up. But that's just what is displayed on the actual contract that Smart Service can produce in there. So you have a little bit of a preference. You can set that up yourself. And then down here, you've got, just like we do for our work order and everything else, some terms and conditions you might want to put in on that service agreement. Feel free to come in here and copy and paste whatever you guys like as some verbiage. It'll be on there next time you go to look. But it's pretty minimal setup other than that. So we got that set up now. We can go ahead and set one of these contracts for a customer. Once again, I'm going to go into my contact search and we're going to grab somebody here. Let's grab Sam. So I open up Sam's record here and I have a new tab. And once again, this is part of the module here, this ESA maintenance tab. So I can click on that and I get kind of an additional screen. Now, what I want to do in here, because there's nothing listed yet for him, is I'll go ahead and hit this add new ESA maintenance. And we've actually built a special little window to kind of accommodate these services. And there's a lot of fields to fill out, so we'll kind of go through these one by one here. The first one that we're going to have is going to be a name. Now, your names really are up to you. The name and type are really up to you guys and how you want those to be named, what you want to call them, all that stuff. It's really going to be something that you're going to recognize a little bit better, so try to go with that kind of naming convention. And all you have to do is just type one in, but I'm going to pick Platinum. So we've already got some in there. And then you're going to have different types. Once again, completely up to you guys as far as what you want to make those types. You just type something in. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to have, multiple types of equipment I'm going to sort. I'm going to have residential and commercial things I'm going to be sorting through. So let's say this is for his HVAC system. If you have any sales reps, you can list one of your sales reps, whoever's responsible for this. This could be one of your technicians as well. If you'd like to keep track of, which technician is getting what contracts and stuff like that, definitely something good. So we'll go ahead and say I put this one in. Now, the customer's price level. So this one's a little bit different from the other fields in here. A price level, for those of you who are familiar, is a percentage increase or decrease off of your regular line items. So for example, I have like a military discount in here. That would give anyone that has that -8% there, 8% off any items that they purchase. It's something that you guys can set up in QuickBooks. so it can add or subtract amounts from your regular items that we don't have to remember all that custom pricing just for that person. Now, the tricky thing is, if you put that on here, it's going to put that on every job. The reason why I mention it is because some people don't do a regular service agreement where, okay, you're going to be covered by this services. They might just say, hey, any service you get from us is going to have this service agreement discount. And they'll pick that here. And then any job that's attached to this service agreement, it'll automatically subtract that amount from it. So something to be careful of. It's very important, though. It's very cool if you guys have that kind of thing. It is available in the program. This early renewal discount here, this is going to factor into the stuff on the right-hand side. So as you guys can see, I have things like our contract dates, a last renewed date, if they've already renewed this contract before, an expiration date. What this early renewal discount does is if you renew your contract before this expiration date, we're going to give you a certain percentage off. Let's say I'll give you 15% off next year if you stay on top of this thing and get that out the door for me. Other than that, if you get this module and you're already in the middle of offering your service agreements, you can record in your backlogged agreements, anything that's canceled or expired already. You might put those in there so you guys can have them. But definitely something good to take a look at. We're going to leave this one as active, though. He's just now getting this. Original contract date will always be set to today. You can come in here and customize it, though. So if their contract began a couple months ago and you're just trying to get all your ones in that you had, not a problem. You can change that date. You can also change their expiration date as well. You just click in there and go ahead and change it. Now, we do have a predefined set of contract periods that we can take a look at here. So I've got 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 or 5 years. What you do is you just select however long you think this contract is going to last. One thing that I get as a question in this a lot in training classes, and I'm sure Jess, you do too, is, well, what if my agreements don't ever expire? Well, all this does really here is it's going to use this and the how to bill to factor in how much the invoice should be when we generate it monthly or whatever it may be. If your agreements do not expire, you can actually go on without an expiration date. You don't have to put one in. Now, that's at the sacrifice of your reporting, though, because you won't be able to see that. But what would that matter if your agreements don't expire anyway, right? So you can remove that, and it'll just continuously keep this agreement active. Now, this contract amount, I'm gonna try to write in here, but I can't. See, I'm typing away, and I can't write anything in there. Well, why? Because the amount for the contract is decided by what items you have on the contract. So if I come down here and we take a look at those service agreement items that we have, what I did is in QuickBooks, I made a couple different service agreement items, and these represent the total annual value of that contract. So I have a gold, silver, and platinum contract. Since this guy's getting the platinum one, we're going to go ahead and give him that platinum one. And what that's going to do here is it's going to look at contract period of year, spread monthly. So there's a contract amount now. There it is divided up over those 12 months. So it's going to go ahead and do the math for you. Now, some of you guys might charge an extra renewal amount on top of that. Totally fine. We got a field for that. You can come in here, type in something if you want to say, hey, if you renew, you get this much. Maybe that's something that's covered by your early renewal discount. Maybe it evens out if you don't have to pay that renewal fee if you renew before it expires. Hey, that's a good way to keep everybody around that we want.
And real quick there, Nori, we got a couple questions here. So Roger's asking here if you can enter those price levels into Smart Service or if it has to be done over there in QuickBooks.
So those price levels do have to be done in QuickBooks. What you'd want to do for those here is we could open up QuickBooks, and you want to go into your lists, and you'll have the option for price level list. And from here, you get your price levels, you hit new, create a new one. Now, with that being said, depending on what version of QuickBooks you have, if you have Enterprise Silver or above, you can do both options. If you have under Enterprise Silver, then you get one option, and the one option is basically a fixed percentage across all items, so you get this window. But Enterprise folks, you can actually set per item what the discount should be. If they're going to only get, let's say maybe half the items, they're going to get, some percentage off. You could do that kind of thing. And let's see what else we had as a question here. Give me a second to read that there, folks. So can the tech see that the customers are on a contract when they're on a call so that the customer can get their 15% off their discounted repairs? Well, here's the cool thing there, Jessica. So once you attach this price level to that customer, it's automatically going to subtract that amount for you. That means that your office staff and your field staff doesn't really have to think about it to do it. They just type in. Once you have the price level on that customer, anytime you add an item, it's automatically going to subtract 15% from the list value for you. So yeah, it'll work just fine out there. They'll get the message and they won't even have to adjust the prices or take anything into account. It'll come up with a different price automatically for them. Another good question here, can you delete items off the agreement? You sure can, Mary. So what we're gonna do there, head back to Smart Service and we'll take a look. You have a little, we used to have a little delete button. We'll have to go ahead and talk about getting that added back. It looks like that is an issue at the moment. Just go ahead and write that down.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right, Mary. We used to have a delete button in there. We'll get that added back for you. Sorry about that. What you could do right now, though, to get rid of something is you could just click on another item that would get rid of that item, just make it a $0 item or something like that. But you're absolutely right. The current option that you could also do is inactivate that item. So you just uncheck that little box and that would remove it from showing up on the contract. So if you notice that when you were making a contract, yeah, you can go ahead and inactivate that item and that'll get rid of it for the time being. But all right, so we've got everything set up here for this agreement. Now, what do we do with the rest of this window? Well, you've got a notes section down here. Now, these notes pertain to your report in Smart Service. If you want to put in a note for something special about this contract, hey, they need to renew on this date because of this date, or, we gave them a special price in this agreement because of this reason. This note doesn't show up anywhere else but in reporting. So it's more of an internal function to remind you guys of something when you go to check, what agreements are expiring, all that good stuff later on. You've got a little window here for your job. So if there are any jobs that are covered by the agreement, and I'll show you how to add these from the job level instead, because like for Sam here, we don't have any jobs open for him yet. So we'll go ahead and do it the other way around. Same with the equipment. If there's certain equipment that is covered by the service agreement, making equipment on the Sam, the customer here, we'll let it populate in here so you can say, hey, these 2 units are covered by this. This unit is not, if they're not paying for that unit. But I've got my contract in here. We can go ahead and save. So now we have that contract listed. And for the rest of this, the majority of Jess's job process that he showed us is going to be pretty much the same. We would go into locations and jobs and we'd add a job or add one from the calendar. Go ahead and let that name be as is. But you'll notice something different here. When we have the service agreement module, you have the option over here on the right-hand side for ESA maintenance. That's going to show you 2 different things about their contracts. 1, the name of the contract, and 2, the type of the contract. So you can see why it's important to pick a good naming scheme there, because if he's got different units that we're working on, I can go ahead and make sure I pick the right agreement for this service. So we'll go ahead and throw that on there. You can still use your job types and stuff like that. Definitely still helpful if you want to get, a little bit better reporting on this. We can kind of fine tune this down. We can come in here and still select our semi-annual. So all of that stuff still works for you, except the big difference, these items. So I set up the contract, right? And I put that platinum level agreement on there. Do I need to do it again? No, you don't. The module itself, as you'll see in a moment here, is going to do the billing for you. So you no longer need the job for billing. You need the job to schedule the information and get it out to the guys. But by the end of this, we're going to be hitting the do not post button on this job because the module will send over an invoice for me quarterly. It's going to remember that stuff. Now, what some people do in here, especially for those of you who are tracking inventory parts, is they'll still go ahead and list out their parts in here. And that's totally fine. You can always come in here and list out your parts and all that stuff. But when I go to add a part, I want to make sure that 1 of 2 things happens. I want to make sure that either A, I zero out that item. I don't want to charge this customer for this again. Or B, you create one of those price levels that's going to be that level of contract. So you select that from here and make it a 100% off thing. That way it automatically subtracts that amount from the total. It automatically takes 100% off the item. That way, when we send this over to QuickBooks, if you do send this over to QuickBooks, and the only reason you'd really do that is, like I said, for inventory. We want it to still come out of inventory in QuickBooks. But we don't want to charge the customer. Sending over a $0 invoice will result in a paid invoice automatically from QuickBooks, which means it comes out of inventory. Customer never sees it. So we got our items set up here properly. The other option here is, if there is an item that is not covered by the agreement, we can still add that and charge just for that item. That's totally fine too. People do that. Scheduling, still going to be the same kind of stuff. You're going to go ahead and schedule this job generally for that unassigned user. So go ahead and pick them out of our list and then add in our contract value. We said semi-annually, so that's what this one will be as well. And the rest of the process stays the same. But like I said, when you post this job over, you either are going to check do not post, or you're going to make sure your line items are zeroed out. We don't need this invoice. We got the majority of it done. We put in everything that we need to get to iFleet, and that's the part that really matters here. So that leads me to the next part then. Well, how do we bill for this agreement? When it becomes time to bill for this, what's that look like? Well, what you're going to have as an option here is back in the home screen under the Office tab, as many of you know, has a lot of the more higher level administrative functions. The service agreement module itself also gives you a ESA maintenance screen, or whatever you choose to name yours. So I can click there. And from here, I can see I have filters to adjust. So I could say, all right, show me these kinds of contracts if we're only billing certain ones. Show me contract periods that are either all of them or that only last, a certain amount of time. So I can go and generate all of them. Status, well, that's probably gonna be important. Maybe I only want to see the active ones, right? I don't want to look at any of the ones that are already expired. We're not going to bill them today. And then, of course, how to bill. Maybe I want to set this for the monthly one so we can find those. The last filters I want to set here is, what are you filtering by? We probably want to filter by either the expiration date if we're trying to renew the annual contracts, or if you wanted to look at what you billed from last time, you could do last invoice. A lot of people are going to be doing this next invoice. That way you can see when they're coming up, and then we can go ahead and pick out some date ranges when we have them in here. When is the next invoice going to be coming up? We're going to go ahead and do ours off expiration so we can see kind of all the contracts that we have in here. And then I'll hit the refresh button, and that'll change our screen, and anything else that we'd have come up in here, we'd have our sorted list of here's who's due when and all that stuff, so be able to see that. Lastly, if you're going to be using the preview button here to take a look at, what invoice we have from Smart Service, you do have options for how this goes over to QuickBooks. You have a mark invoice to be printed, to be emailed, just like post work orders. You can have it include a following date. We're going to do this maybe as a quarterly bill. Maybe you want to put on the first of the month, whatever you want to do. This little guy here, include the billing cycle on invoice. If you want that to show up on there. And then secondly, if you want those jobs to show up as a note on that invoice. Now in our screen here, we have our basic information that we listed out. So you've got the name, contract name, the dates, all that good stuff. But you got some buttons over here. What do they do? Well, the post button, that's going to actually bill Sam for his contract. So whenever I'm ready, I can come in here and hit that post button, monthly for his contract. That way it bills him every month. I have a little pencil exclamation symbol. That's going to open up that same contract screen that we were in to set up the contract. So there's his information. If I need to review his contract before I'm posting it over or make an adjustment, maybe that total is not right, or, we got the wrong thing, we can go ahead and make those adjustments from here. You have a Microsoft Word mail merge button that you guys can merge something out, or you can use it to print something. And then right here, if you're already using the mail merge for something else, we do have another print button. That way you guys can just take a look at, what this default contract looks like, and it'll save it right there for you. And then our last thing here that we want to do is we want to go ahead and hit the post button or check our little post all box. You see we have options that'll, do all these things at the bottom for you. Let's go ahead and hit post on him. Get that sent over to QuickBooks for us. And then let's go ahead and hop in there and take a look. And that gentleman's name was Sam.
Yes. And while you're looking that up there, Nori, Mary had another question. She's asking whether or not there's a way to handle items that wouldn't fall under that discount for, maintenance agreement. So you are able to do that, but you do need to have one of the higher level QuickBooks options, because when you're using like Pro or Premier, for example, you only have the ability to set up like a percentage rate. But if you're using something like Enterprise, for example, you can go in on a line item by line item basis and apply that discount.
But already, so I was able to find that agreement here. We can take a look. We can see here that in QuickBooks, it's got my amount correct for me. So that's our monthly amount. I can see which plan it is, and I can see that billing cycle because those are the options we chose. So now we got all that stuff in QuickBooks and it's ready to go out there. But alrighty, guys, we got a couple more minutes here before we gotta call it a day. I want to show you one more thing about that module that I think is really nice and helpful. Over in your reporting section, you guys actually get an entirely new section of reports that is service agreements. So we can go in here and we'll just call this, just ESA report or something similar to what Jess had earlier would be just fine. But check this out. With the service agreement type of report, you can actually pull not only your customer field, so I can get the name and all that good stuff, but I can also get our service agreement field. So everything that we've seen today that's available in that service agreement module is something I can report on. Maybe I want to report on, let's just go ahead and we'll do a simple one. Let's say the customer name, expiration date, and then let's go ahead and get that status in there. And you know what? We're going to be calling these people. Let's go ahead and get a phone number. So where do I reach this guy at? And let's go ahead and look at either a renewal amount, or I could look at the contract amount, depending on what you're going to charge them for. Of course, we'll want to format that, so we'll say that's currency. So now I can get a good report of when are these people expiring, where do I reach them at, and how much do they owe us to continue this contract for next year. Of course, you want to apply some sorting and grouping to this. We'll just go ahead and let's sort this by maybe the let's go ahead and do the expiration date. And I don't think we need any grouping on this one for now, so we're good to go. I can go ahead and save that. And that's going to make a special category over here, service agreement reports. Once again, you could filter it down to, agreements expiring this month or agreements of a certain type. But if I check out this report, I can see my customers, when they're going to be expiring. That way I could say, hey, I need to go ahead and give this guy a call. We can go ahead and get that money. We can go ahead and total this up to see how much money we are bringing in from service agreements. But it's a nice little tool there. You guys get a completely separate table just for the service agreements that you're going to have. So if that level of organization is important to you, definitely check out the module, folks. But all right, that brings us just about to time here. So I want to go ahead and give you guys a couple of resources before we send you off for the day. So let me go ahead and bring that up real quick. So a couple of resources that we have available to you here. We have, as always, smartservice.com/webinar. That's going to bring up, the latest webinars we have, including this one. You guys will be able to review that information from here. If you want to show this off to the other office employees, the boss, let them know that, hey, service agreements are really going to bring in some good income for our customers or for our company. It's going to bring in some good customers for us. Let's go ahead and let them know that kind of stuff. If you want to see what's coming up in the next version of Smart Service, you can always join Ben and I at smartservice.com/updates. We're going to be doing a quarterly update video before too long here about the latest features for the next version of Smart Service. And then after that, you guys can always visit smartservice.com/wiki. That's where you can see all these tutorial videos, full-on articles that are in-depth about reporting and scheduling and everything else that an office user should know. And then lastly, remember, we would probably recommend about, what would you say, just 2 hours every 2 years for training?
Yeah.
Just to keep up to date on the latest features that are going into this program. You can always contact your implementation team at 888-518-0818. Get your questions answered, go ahead and get some training scheduled, get the office up to date to make sure you're getting the most benefit out of the investment you made with us. But all right, folks, that makes it 3 o'clock. So hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.